General, when we're looking at the classes brought, people seem to be really relying on Dragon, which gets banned, Shadow as kind of a solid option to take, and then Swordcraft really rising in an incredible amount of popularity compared to the last few expansions.
Do you guys see that?
I see Dragoncraft here. We'll
Whael has a Dragoncraft deck, not banned. Oh my gosh.
Bloodcraft also coming up in popularity as well. I think people really moved away from Bloodcraft in the early parts of the expansion, but it's making an appearance here. So based on the mulligans here, I mean, it's looking fairly good for both players here. Just the fact that Whael is going second means the ramp is going to be a little bit slower. What do you think?
So this is Aggro Blood against PDK Dragon, Prime Dragon Keeper Dragon, who was playing Master Draconic Arts, which is a ward follower available to the PDK decks. That it's pretty great in ladder. I don't think I've seen it in tournament play yet, but Aggro Blood, it's a tough matchup no matter what you're playing.
Perhaps we will see Propillow using that that kind of approach to this. Perhaps leaving it up, thinking he is playing very aggressive decks in his lineup. Had Aggro Sword, which got banned, has Enemy Shadow on the side of this. So really, we'll see if he can overtake Whael just by playing out a lot more pressure early on. Already almost has his board full.
Right. He does have quite a few options already available to him on 3 play points, pushing his opponent down to 15 even.
And here comes the is it even the tournament debut or of this deck even? But Master of Draconic Arts, I imagine, is primarily teched to deal with things like this, but Propillow has such an advantage on board, I can't imagine it changes much about this.
Right, Draconic Arts, I know from playing Draconic Arts myself that it usually feels pretty good to play on curve. But if you're going second and your opponent's playing an aggro deck, if they flooded it, they went wide expecting you to play this, then it does not feel that great. Especially when Propillow was holding a Razor Claw. He could also have had Snarling Chains. Any way to do 3 damage to this is just really feels bad, man.
I think what Propillow is considering now is whether or not he wants to commit.
Ooh,
that Razor
okay,
Claw.
That is very interesting. He will lose a bit of his board here.
He either goes for a second value trade and leaves Urias at 1, or forfeits his Direwolf here, or Bloodwolf.
I imagine he will hit with Urias and Curse Brand and push 2-face, as the Bloodwolf can push more damage over 2 turns.
I think his main consideration, if he's pausing so much over the difference of 1 and 2 defense, is perhaps thinking that Whael has enough next turn to play Matilda alongside the Fire Lizard to ping for 1 damage next turn. And so now he's wondering whether he wants to protect the Urias from that, or the 2-1 body.
And it's like he chooses to give Whael the option to hit either, but he does choose to protect he keeps the Bloodwolf alive. Which I think is a much better play. I think I like that a lot.
I agree. He understands that Urias is going to be getting that ping damage in regardless.
You're adorable.
Urias evolved to take care of Urias. Fire Lizard can take down the Bloodwolf, but has Propillow just done enough damage already? I think he probably has.
He has the play points now. Vania gives him another option as well, but he could just simply take out the Fire Lizard with the Angel of the Word, and, well, I always see some variation here. Either before this draw, he could have been considering throwing the Razor Claw already, but he also has the option in Vania now for his first evolve, if he doesn't want to send that face, that is.
I think we're just gonna full Smorg. I think he's gonna Vania evolve and then throw the Angel of the Word effect face. With Razor Claw, with an evolve left in the background, your opponent also can't play Breath of Salamander the following turn. I think this will just be a full Smork play. He will go face completely. But he disagrees. He goes for the Fire Lizard. Okay.
He had already resolved 5 damage on face there. Perhaps he was thinking that the remainder of burn in his hand being only 4, he would need just a little bit more off of the top to do it, so instead tries to develop as widely as possible. knows that a Whael wouldn't be able to access Breath of the Salamander or anything like that to respond to this just yet.
Mm-hmm. And this is just 100% over. Sybil can come down to put him at 10, but that would leave far too much on the board for it to matter. So.
Mm-hmm. I think we really saw Propillow able to take advantage of that weakness of PDK here. That even though Whael was able to play followers out early, even defensive ones on curves such as Master of Draconic Arts or a Sybil immediately now, that's just simply not enough to deal with all this pressure.
And he just passes the turn. Doesn't show his opponent that he's playing Sybil, even though it's an open deck list. Lets him get those BM emotes out.
Nobody can stop me.
Another Razor Claw, I think. Not much more could have gone right for Propillow in this game, really.
It's a pretty good strategy to keep, you keep PDK up, because you think you can target it. Your opponent's confidently going to play PDK, right? So I don't really think that Whael will switch his deck, mostly because PDK probably has a better chance against Atomy than Forest does anyway. So if Propillow ends up sniping PDK twice, that would be a great strategy for him.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to see how it works for him, because Atomy can go either way, really. There's just so much, I don't want to call the list itself inconsistent, but it can have such a great variation on when exactly it goes off.
Right. The deck can be called a lot of things, and, right, variance and variation are usually two words that can describe it for sure. Those are the same word, but,
The variations of the same word.
Right, yes, clearly, yeah. It's a pretty okay hand for Atomy. It really depends on what else he draws into. Whale's stuck going first this time, so he can actually play Draconic Arts on curve going first, which is much more effective than the reverse.
We can expect it will take off a lot of chip damage depending on how Propillow develops here.
Nice to see
Staircase
However, he
is a
top
good...
decked the perfect turn 1 play for Atomy to have gone with, so Staircase will come down this turn. And even has turn 3 Bone Chimera, so turn 4 Atomy is pretty guaranteed with this hand.
Especially if we can find something like another 1-drop to continue developing here.
Usually the best answer that PDK Dragon has for this is to just have a Dragoon Scyther available in time to evolve into Atomy. So, I don't know if he has that. If he has that available soon enough, he can get this, but if not...
The dragon is a state of mind.
Breath of the Salamander may give him a little bit more of a way to remove some things from Propillow early and prevent this Atomy from coming down, rather forcing Propillow into a position where he has to just play followers out, let this Staircase go off the next opportunity he gets.
Propillow also might slow down his Atomy a little bit since he is playing double Frozen Mammoth. I don't think that he will, but he does have Frozen Mammoths. He doesn't have Ceridwins though, so...
Not playing Ceridwen I find very interesting. Usually it is the backup plan, but Whael probably understands that not doing anything about this Bone Chimera is going to end up in at least a very great risk for Lord Atomy that is posed against him here.
Right, I think Whael understands that if you clear this Bone Chimera, sure, you make Staircase closer to going off, but you also basically remove the option for Atomy the following turn. And if you get Atomy without Dragoon Scyther in hand, then you might just scoop right there, but it looks like he's just gonna ignore it. Interesting.
Now playing PDK here is really interesting. It's something that I more often see Dragon do, or PDK Dragon do, going first versus Sword or more aggressive lists, but decides to do it here. What do you make of that?
I imagine he might think that Propillow might not Atomy. He just wants it on the board to attack. It also kind of has pseudo ward in the sense that Propillow wouldn't want to, not attack it.
But throwing it up here is really interesting because he doesn't have a Staircase or anything like that in play to find another one. And he doesn't really have a ramp into a play. It just seems like aggressive rather than reactive to me for him to do that and then also go face.
So the board is now set up for Atomy. Triple Belinus in the hand of Propillow. That's not good. And he does not hesitate. Atomy comes down. Belinus could be played to fill the board out a little bit more. Staircase is popping next turn, so his hand will refill with options. And he could evolve either this Or the Belinus. I imagine, yeah, Belinus, okay.
Splits up his stats a little bit. Wondering if playing the PDK is paying off for Whael, or if he just felt that he had to do something there or to get something out on the board.
Whale's in an awkward spot, drawing Bahamut, not doing much. Slaps down Sybil immediately. It's kind of all he can do this turn. Atomy is killable if you throw most of your board into it here, so we'll see if that's what he goes for.
To make the world blue.
I imagine that's what this evolve means, but he's actually still going
He's not.
first.
He's ignoring the Atomy. Okay.
No.
Going to go ahead and imagine that's the correct play. You know, he knows what he's doing, probably.
Now that I glance at Propillow's hand, I'm starting to actually see the sense in this. He's able to ramp up into Forte. Perhaps he's just trying to convert all this chip damage that Propillow is had to spend his first few turns ignoring just in order to get enemy out onto the board, in order to set up a Forte back to back with another one.
Right. This is interesting because Whael has a board that, you know, Atomy could go face for 10 right here, but if you do, PDK becomes unattackable next turn, and Sybil continues healing. So these followers kind of have pseudo ward. They need to be dealt with.
Another thing worth considering is that when Forte comes down on Overflow, gaining the inability to be attacked alongside that, depends, like, the effectiveness of that would depend on Propillow having something like a Lurching Corpse, a Zombie Party, or otherwise to deal with it, but as we can see, at least as I can scan, there's nothing like that in Propillow's hand.
Come to an end.
Propillow may actually ignore PDK and push 8 face if he wants to actually end the game. That's probably what needs to happen. I don't know, he might end up regretting that.
It must be a difficult read to make here. He does go for it.
So he will get slapped by a Forte this turn, more than likely, since Breath of Salamander still can't clear. Another PDK drawn for Whael anyway, but this one now, while Overflow is active, is unattackable. Had the other one lived, it would have also activated its ability this turn and become unattackable. So I think that is great that that Propillow had the foresight to get rid of that while he could.
Though that said, Whael doesn't really have anything in the way of refill. The PDK in his hand is not activating with anything else. Really, he, by going with that aggressive strategy to just keep hitting face and throwing down things that put pressure, I think has linearized his options into only really being able to throw in the Fortes here. I hope it works.
That is true. However, we can see that probably might just work, as Propillow does not have Lurching Corpse. He does not have any spells that can handle an evolved Forte on the board since it can't be attacked anymore. So, and he goes for it. I mean, that's his only out, so I actually do like this. Whether he evolves it or not, we'll see.
Chooses not to. I suppose he's not part. I mean, I can definitely see why he didn't evolve that one, and that he wants to test Pillow for answers first, and as we can see, he hasn't drawn anything like that. Saving that evolve for next turn, he knows he has the setup if this somehow survives over it. Reads Propillow won't have lethal with Tyrant or anything like that. Really interesting way to play this matchup. I actually wasn't expecting him to stay so relevant in the game like this.
This is one of the most awkward things I think I've seen in tournament play recently. Propillow has a hand of 8 cards, and he can't answer a 1-attack follower. If he had a simple way to get rid of the Belinus in his hand, he could do it, but there's nothing he can do, actually. This Forte will live, which will attack him again with the second Forte in the evolve, which will kill him. And he can't do 20 in one turn.
Even the Andrew Alphas in his hand is unable to pop itself or anything in the hand to draw for more options that would then pop Belinus.
He is literally just stuck to watch himself die.
Well, I suppose that is a lot of the power of the can't be attacked tag. And
right, yeah.
Really,
I mean, honestly, you know, it's a very powerful keyword, or really clause, actually. But this is probably the most relevant time I've ever seen it matter. I think.
Like, it's so difficult to deal with PDK, but then like when this is how the situation slowly turns out, I imagine even Whael is surprised.
Yeah,
I think this just demonstrates the original power.
The actual strength of the can't be attacked clause coming into play right here. Huh.
The most classic way possible. That was hardly even a PDK game. I think that was just followers into Forte, actually.
Yeah, that was interesting. You know, it's when you don't ban Prime Dragon Keeper decks, you kind of expect Prime Dragon Keeper to be the way, that you end up losing the game, right? Losing board and everything. But, not having a way to kill a one health Forte is obviously a very interesting and unique way to die to that. That's got to be unfortunate.
I imagine what the chances would be because he had just halves of it, but
Time for
we'll
me
see.
to prove myself.
Propillow moving on to now
Mother, father,
have to deal with
one.
Forest or Roach Forest in his last attempt.
And Roche Forest, like we've already said, we always kind of he mulliganed Airbound Barrage into Airbound Barrage. Roach Forest, the deck that we always talk about, has that sort of like clock on it. Like it will eventually do more than 20, so it doesn't really matter what you do to it if you aren't killing it, right? So Atomy has to come down pretty fast for it to matter.
We see the pieces to one. We just he himself is a bit Mia here.
He is definitely missing in action. Somebody call Mia on Atomy.
I wonder if would you know any statistics on like how what's the probability of how far into one's deck or how many draws it takes to find a copy of a card you run 3 of within like the first 4-ish turns? 'Cause I
What you're
feel like
referring to is called hypergeometric distribution. It's got a very fancy name. If you were going second and play 3 Atomies, you have roughly, I think, if you mulligan your whole hand, something like a 48% chance of having one in the opening hand. So to not have one, Propillow has just landed tails when heads would have been much better.
Could one extend that logic to then say that if you haven't found him in your opening hand or within the next few draws, then it is further unlikely that you continue to draw, flipping to that probability every time to still have not found one? Because every time I watch...
Yes, you can use the logic on Dimensional Shift even to decide how ridiculous and ludicrous it is that you haven't found one 20 cards in. Once you get about 15 deep, you're looking at like a 10% chance of actually not having found one yet, so when you run 3 of something, it's a pretty high chance that you actually find it.
Right. I feel like that's
And
always
as
what...
we see Propillow continuously, he has not found one yet. 9 cards deep, so he's getting there.
I decided not to evolve the Andralphus to get its effect off. Perhaps just thinking that this staircase could feasibly pop kind of soon, still hasn't found anything.
Now, the odds of being something like 16 cards deep and then staircase still not finding PDK, or still not finding Atomy, that is when you get to true ascension. Something like a 2% chance of not finding Atomy at that point.
I think like the probability of not having an answer to a Forte in about 9 draws.
Yeah, just about, yeah. Or having a full hand of cards in Shadow with no way to kill a follower on your own board.
Right, I think Propillow is suffering just a little bit here, but Whael's development at the moment towards finding these roaches bounces for them well. He has actually assembled quite a bit of it. So if he's looking for anything else, it would be perhaps some more fairies, which he plays for.
That is true. However, we do kind of talk about Roach having that clock end game. But if you take too much chip damage from fairies in the beginning, that clock speeds up very significantly. So. Propillow definitely needs to watch out for that. It's also kind of awkward to trade into these fairies with ghosts made by Haunted House because they would just clash and kill the ghost first, unfortunately.
Which makes that a completely unviable option for him. He's gonna draw a little bit more.
Triple Soul. Triple Demon Eater. Okay, all right.
Well, he could draw a little bit more. he could keep this going. Though he would end up milling a card if he did.
Right, he would, because if he plays any more followers that can be destroyed, Whael could pick up on that and pop the staircase on purpose, which would then mill close to 4 cards probably. So.
And then I suppose he has to take the grace of this ghost banishing itself, not doing that. Because the most tragic thing I could imagine happening here would be finally getting the search on Atomy, finally being able to put that pressure, except just simply as burns itself.
Right, Atomy milling himself would be highly unfortunate. Looks like Propillow's going to try and evolve here to get a little bit of pressure off the board. Every point of damage does matter, so... completely justifiable.
Sparkly stuff. Gimme.
I think approaching turn 7 with 2 roaches in hand. Usually, the inclusion of 2 0-cost fairies is what creates a lot more damage here. But gonna play for some more chip, it looks like.
And I do like this from Whael. You know, he realizes that he's against an Atomy deck that's obviously not doing what it needs to be. And he's just going to poke. He's going to do 2 damage with that roach and put it back in his hand. He's got 3 bounces, now 2 in his hand. So he has plenty of resources here to keep doing that.
I'd say we could assume that Whale's hand is going to be finding lethal pretty soon. His board space will clear up with this Foot of the Brambles. It's not going to be next turn, but I could definitely see some draws that would accelerate it over the next few.
Definitely. He doesn't obviously want to kill this goblin, I'm 90% sure, since that would trigger the staircase.
You're done for.
So he's even evolving for face. I like this. I like this play a lot.
Sparkly.
Alright, that's so much chip damage, in fact, that I think he's trying to set up with some possibility of top decking something like a fairy circle next turn, being able to find it.
I don't think he actually needs to. If he goes next turn, if he just plays Fairy Nature's Airbound Roach Evolve the Roach.
I think you'd be looking at about 11 damage with that if I
Yeah, that's
counted
11.
that.
Yeah,
I mean, just the single survival of one
Yeah.
fairy would do it.
probably. Either way, Propillow top decks into a Skull Beast, which is not the most useful card he could have found.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it again, I think a fairy roach, bounce roach. No, never mind. That's one play point too much.
I'm coming for you.
He gets the Ghost, he has a Demon Eater target, which is pretty nice with a 4 play point difference. Never mind, he goes for the Skull Beast first.
Food should act like food.
I wonder what Propillow would really be looking for at this point. I think it's a little late to be trying to find an Atomy here.
I'm not sure if we should count this as Caster Curse or not, since he definitely has at this point done exactly what I said he didn't want to do, and is now halfway through his deck with no Atomy when he does play
After
3.
having searched followers as well, to make that just a little bit more unlikely.
I'm coming for
And unfortunately, he
you.
can't kill this Goblin Mage, which will just end up being lethal through the Roach Poke. Wow.
Well, we can't call it inconsistent, but we can say that there is variance, and this is just one of those results. 6 turns, drew half his deck, and still could not find the setup for it. And that can be something that this is very dependent on. Unfortunate for him. Sometimes that's just how it
Definitely
goes.
unfortunate, yep. And he's gonna go for the 11 damage that we talked about. He could actually just play Fairy into Roach, evolve one of the Roaches, and that will be game.
It won't be long now. Nice to see you.
There it is.
Hey, what?
With the nice to see you. Propillow.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Sends them to the losers bracket. All right, get out of here. That's what Whale said. So Roach Force will actually take a win, and I think both times Atomy was put into an awkward situation. Obviously, one of them being that there's a 1 health forte that you just cannot touch.
That was
is
so awkward. That was so
annoying.
awkward. You have Bellinus in hand and you can't get rid of it? Oh my gosh, dude.